Gracious alive. I get the pleasure of introducing Mark here in just a second. I do want to make mention of this. My name's Jeff, a very grateful believer in Jesus, who has been drug and alcohol free now for 36 years. But hey, thank Jesus for it. Still struggling with some stuff, man, some codependency things. I got a laundry list just like everybody else. But I'm still a winner, and you are too. And I do want to make reference because Eloy and the boy band refused. They forgot to bring up the cross, right? And how could you forget the cross? If you look over here, you see it covered in hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And those are a lot of our hurts, habits, and hang-ups. And, we gave them to Jesus in a time of prayer, but we also come and we wrote some of them down and nailed them to the cross. We wanted to do something literal, just give them to him and leave them with him. And so there's plenty of paper, there's plenty of nails, and we got a hammer down there. So as soon as service is over, if you would like to bring up here, don't write your name on it, just write your need. God knows who you are, and just nail it to him. But I do want to make one more thing mention. It keeps going in and out on me, doesn't it? I do want to mention one more thing. The boy band was up here, and I remember when the boy band first walked into this building, and they might have been a little silly and everything now, but I would a whole lot rather see them the way they are now than the way they were. And and part of the reason that they looking in the mirror and maybe glad at who's looking back at them now is the fact they became a part of a community. And I wanted to stress that before I introduce Mark. Listen, don't break away from the community. You know, Tony needed the community, and the community needed Tony, and the community was there for him and in tough times, and he was there for everybody else. And so, listen, don't try to fight your battle alone. Become a part of a community of believers and brothers and sisters, because we can love and support each other. Amen. Hey, I get the privilege of introducing Mark. I just met him just a little bit earlier, but I've heard a lot about him. And he is from Gosnell. I'm from Blytheville, and I don't hold that against him. There was always this idea about Gosnell folks and Blytheville folks just in class. Yeah. But, hey, it's going to be an incredible night, and I guarantee you God's going to use him to inspire you and encourage you tonight to make some decisions about some things in your life. Amen. So without any further ado, come on, Mark. Give it up for Mark Taylor.
Is this thing on? Burgess, wherever you are, hit some kind of button, make sure this thing's hot. I'm Mark. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. It's an honor to be here. Y'all get fired up in here, and that's what I like to see. You know, why would we not be fired up and be happy if we've been brought out of the pits of hell? How many of y'all in this room are in recovery? I'm just curious. All right, so I'm going to say this before I start talking. I am a BSU graduate. If you know what that means, that's burnt, slap up. I will go forwards, backwards. I'll forget what year stuff happened. I'll forget something and have to go back 12 years to tell you about it. But, if y'all been there, you understand. I'm going to read one little passage here before I start. It's in Lamentations chapter 3 and verse 55. It said, I called on your name, O Lord, from the lowest pit. You have heard my voice. Do not hide your ear from my sign, from my cry for help. You drew near on the day I called on you and said, do not fear. O Lord, you have pleaded the case for my soul. You have redeemed my life. I'm going to tell our story, his story of redemption, because, see, that's what he does. You know, I've been through a whole lot of stuff, but I love telling it. I love what I've been brought out of, because if he can bring me out of it, he can bring anybody out of it. So Toby Wicker is how I wound up here. He asked me, I guess a month and a half ago if I would like to come here and speak. I can't say no. I've never said no since I left John 3:16 a few months ago. I can't say no. Because, see, I've been bought at a price. My life's not my own. It's his story to tell. The Word of God says I got stuck. See, that's that dope right there I was talking about. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, those whom he has delivered from the hand of the enemy. I've been delivered from the hand of the enemy. But I'm 43 years old. I'm from Blytheville, but I went to school at Gosnell. I've been around that area my whole life. My parents were awesome, great childhood growing up. My mom worked at the school, was always cooking supper, breakfast, bring us lunch, do whatever. My dad was a deacon at the church. He was on the school board. He worked hard. He taught us to work hard. He coached my sister and myself both in T-ball all the way up until we got to playing high school ball. He's a volunteer fireman, perfect example of what a servant should do. I mean, the greatest parents ever. Around 15 years old, I decided, man, I kind of like this drinking stuff a little bit. Liquid Courage gets me where I can talk to whatever female I want to talk to. I thought I could dance. That's a complete lie from the pits of hell. I cannot dance. Never have been able to, but y'all know how that goes. But I made good grades all the way through school. Got college academic scholarship. Blew that off pretty quick. I like to party and go out and get wild. Got on a good job with energy, doing line work, climbing poles, hanging transformers, and was good at it in 2003. I got married, had my son in 2004, and continued to work for energy. It's a great paying job, especially in Mississippi County. You got Nucor, you work for energy, and hey, you're up there by the world standards. You're doing great. And I was young, bought my first house, stayed there about a year, flipped it, doubled what I gave for it, bought another house, bigger, better, and a better neighborhood, but at the same time, I continued to drink. I really wasn't messing with drugs, just drinking. But it got bad enough that my son's mom had got enough of it around 07, 08, somewhere right in there, decided that she wanted a divorce, took my son and my stepdaughter that I'd raised since she was 6 months old, and left. Well, I should have listened to my dad, him telling me all along, hey, you probably need to get in church. You need to do something different, son. Quit hanging out at the bar. You done lost your family. I didn't need to hear all that. See, I thought I had everything figured out. My bills are paid. I got money in the bank. I'm going to the bar. I'm going to do what I want. So I did. Shortly after, I met another woman that my family, my friends, everybody thought, don't marry her, but I did. And we partied and drank and did a lot of stuff we shouldn't have done together, and it became a problem that we'd go out, we'd go to a party, go to the bar. Either I'd get too drunk, falling down where somebody had to carry me home and she'd want to stay out, or the other way around. So we kind of thought we're doing right. We'll just make a deal. We go out together, we come home together. Y'all know how that works. That does not work. Well, we tried that for a little while. July the 3rd of 2010, we got up early that morning. So I lived in the country club subdivision in Blytheville. The golf course, there's a whole little block there. You ride golf carts, you ride side-by-sides, that whole neighborhood, and it's mostly guys that work at Nucor. My uncle being one of them, my cousin. We all lived right there together, a bunch of buddies. Nucor works 4 on, 4 off, and they swing shift, night shift, day shift. No matter what time of day it was, I had a drinking buddy. It could be 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 at night, but anyway, 3rd of July, started early that morning. We were at a so-called friend's house, started cooking, barbecuing, and drinking. This went on through the day. We went to this guy's dad's, or we were at the dad's house, went to the son's house later that evening, playing poker, drinking, partying, cooking. I had my son that weekend. He was 5 years old at the time. Somewhere along midnight, he started getting restless, and I told my wife at the time, hey, we got to go home. Weston's wore out. We got to go home. She wouldn't leave with me. We get into it. I get in the Rhino, put him in there, took him home, put him in the bed, told him don't come out of his room, and shut his door. We continued texting, calling, fighting, arguing. You need to get home. She wasn't coming. I don't really know what time, 2, 3 in the morning, somewhere like that. My so-called buddy brought my wife home with hardly nothing on. Well, you know what just happened. We get to arguing right in the doorway, so it's like my kitchen, there's a couple steps, my carport, we're right there in that doorway arguing. I had a Kel-Tec 380 that I always had in my pocket. If my pants were on, that pistol was in my pocket. I was that guy. I love guns. I still love guns. But we get pretty heated in the argument, and I pulled that little 380 out, and I said, I ought to just blow my brains out. You don't want nothing but money from me anyway. I said, I'm not losing everything I got again. I'm not rebuying my house. You're not getting half of my 401k. I'll just blow my brains out, and you'll get it all. She looked me right in the face right here and said, well, quit being a punk and pull the trigger. And I did. You know, you hear people talk about your life flashing before your eyes and seeing things come out of the light. Y'all, that really happens. It did with me. I seen my son being born. It's just stuff flashing back. Grandparents that had been gone. I'm seeing all this stuff. But what really sticks out, and what I always like to talk about, I had two buddies that had died a few years before, one named Mark Bond and one named Scott Strohmeyer. We were always together for years. I mean, if there was a party going on, me and Stroh and Mark, we were there. So Mark had got killed in a car wreck in Steele, hit a pole at the overpass. I was working at Energy at the time that happened, so Energy can feed across the state line into Missouri. There's a switch at Yarborough that sometimes we would close to feed transmission line into there. Senior lineman called me one night and said, something's going on at Steele, ride with me to close this switch. Go up there, we close the switch to feed them. He said, let's ride on up and see what's going on. We ride up the road, see a truck wrapped around a pole. They're looking for the guy, can't find him. He ended up being in the bed of his truck, and it was Mark. Right about that same time, our buddy Scott Strohmeyer took his own life with a shotgun. Man, I had a lot of stuff go on. And then here I was, had just done that. But these two come out of this real bright light that night. And I mean, it was so real. It was like us sitting here looking at each other right now. And Mark looked at me and said, you got to turn around and go back. And Scott said, it ain't time, man. You got to go back. And you can think what you want to about what that was. I know what it was. But I ended up getting air back to Memphis. So God started intervening that night. You know, God is in control, but we have free will. God being in control, he had nothing to do with me pulling that trigger. That was my fault. That was my stupidity. That was my free will doing what, hey, you can do whatever you want. I did. But at the point that God took me somehow through the ambulance drivers, the hospital is literally a block and a half from my house. It's right there. They didn't take me to the hospital. They took me about 5 miles to Walker Park. There was not a helicopter pad at the hospital at that time. Had they taken me to the hospital, they would have had to got me stable before they could transport, and I didn't stabilize for 3 days. So they drove me to Walker Park, landed the helicopter, get me loaded in there. So the flight nurse that night, this is God working again, is Leslie Frazier, a girl that I'd previously dated and was engaged to for a while. I was unrecognizable, but she's asking who's the patient, and they kept telling her David Taylor, and she said, I know David Taylor, and that ain't him. When she grabbed my hand to start the IV, she figured out who it was and kind of freaked out. They told her, we'll get the other flight team out of Dyersburg, and she told them, we can't, he won't make it. So she had to trach me, had to slit my throat, put a trach in. You know, God used somebody that knew me, had known me for pretty well my whole life to save my life. So I ended up in Memphis at the med, died twice in the helicopter, got brought back. Get there, and this part's a little tough. So there was a couple of people that beat my parents to the med that night. One of them was Jackie Riggs. He's a great family friend. There's not better people on the planet than him and his family. I'll do anything in the world for them. They were there when my parents got waiting. And my senior lineman, Stanley Orr, he's no longer with us, but Stan was a great man. I don't know anybody that's ever said a bad word about Stanley Orr. One of the best men I've ever known. He was there too, waiting on my parents when they come in. But anyway, my parents get there. Doctors come out and talk to them. They're fixing to take me in surgery. 16 to 18 hours, don't know if I'm going to make it or not. So my wife shows up with her dad. They done brought her down there, and still hardly nothing on, you know, messed up, pills, drunk, all that stuff, hollering I need a Xanax and all this mess. So she ended up passing out. They come out somewhere 12, 14 hours into the surgery to tell my parents they think I'm going to make it. She comes to and says, I'm the beneficiary. That was the first words out of her mouth. My dad was not a mean or angry or, you know, he was just a down-to-earth guy, but he got up, went and told her dad, get her out of here, and I mean right now. They left, ended up coming back, had all these surgeries. So I lost my left eye in that deal. It didn't come out there, so what happened, bullet went in here, it broke my jaw, went behind my eye socket, it cut the optic nerve, and it turned 90 degrees. Somehow it was sitting on the outside of my skull under my skin right there on my forehead. Broke my jaw here, broke my cheek, broke under my eye socket and had a fracture up here, but that bullet turned 90 degrees. God's the only one I know anywhere that's going to turn a bullet 90 degrees. You know, at that point, when I heard all that later, it's like, man, God must have just said, no, not this one, Satan, you ain't getting this one. That's all that could be. But I went through a lot of surgeries. Promised my son when I finally got to see him again that I would never drink again. And for the most part, now in the end of my addiction, I did some, but it was to me, drinking was a 30-pack and go get a fifth every day. I drank a couple of times, but with all the surgeries that I had, guess what? You can get all the pain pills you want. They'll give you whatever you want. You go in there and show them a scan of your head, and you got metal plates and screws all in your face. They just throw out a menu, throw it on the table, say, well, what works for you? So I ended up with 34 surgeries, got hooked on pain pills, started going to detoxes, started going to 30-day rehabs. My dad telling me all the time, you need to get in church, or we need to find you a rehab somewhere that teaches Jesus. We didn't know nothing about John 3:16. We didn't know nothing about breaking bonds, none of that. No, Dad, I don't need all that. I just need to go again to get clean. It'll be all right. Well, there were several times I went to rehab to get off pain pills and left there with more pain pills than I was getting per month when I went in there. They'd tell me, you just ain't getting enough. It ain't strong enough. So I'm going through a bunch of stuff. You know, in my mind, the doctor's giving me this stuff. Even though I'm starting to have to buy them on the street, it's prescribed. At least I'm not doing coke. I'm not doing meth. I ain't shooting up. I'm all right. So keep going to rehab, and then gets to where, you know, you get where you're taking 100 plus hydrocodones a day. That don't work. So found something called roxicodone, and that really messed me up. And I was about 30 to 40 30s a day. If you don't know, back then they were $30, they were $1 a milligram, $1,000 a day is about what I was blowing or stealing or doing whatever I had to do to get them. But I think it was in November, December of 2015. No, it was earlier than that. Anyway, 2015, get a call from my mom one day and said, you need to go get your sister, call her, find her, do whatever, and y'all need to come to our house. We need to talk. So we get out there and find out my dad's got lung cancer. You know, and he's the one that's held the whole family together. My sister had struggled with addiction. Dad was he was our God. He's the one that bailed us out. He's the one that always helped us. So he ended up having surgery, had half of his left, I think it was his left lung removed. No, it was his right lung. Anyway, half of it removed, went through chemo, went through radiation, had to drive from Blytheville to Jonesboro to NEA for months every day to either have chemo or radiation. And a few months into it, they said, hey, it's everything's gone, you're clear. So I went back another checkup. I think at 3 months, cancer's clear. I'm like, man, everything's good, all right. Well, we get a call a few months later, you need to go get your sister and come to the house. Like, it's bad. So we get back out there, and cancer's back. It's in his lymph nodes, it's in both lungs, it's in his bones. He's ate up 2 weeks, 6 months to live. I was living with my parents at the time, and called myself doing right, trying to help take care of my dad as far as getting him up, helping bathe him, take him to appointments. But I would also, when it come time to give him his medicine, I'd give him one and I'd take 10 out of the bottle. You know, 6 hours later, I'd give him one, I'd take 10 or 20 out of the bottle. Now, that's some of the hardest stuff I had to let go of when I finally got help and got right was, man, I stole pain medicine from my dying dad. I did, but you know what? God's forgiven me of that. I'm sure my dad's forgiven me. I know where he is. And there's a lot of good that's going to come from this later. So living with my mom, like I said, and then in May of 2016, they come in there and woke me up one morning. He's gone. Now, in my messed up mind, my dad's laying in the floor in our living room at my mom's house. He had got where he couldn't get in the hospital bed we had. Just had a mattress laying on the floor, where he could get in bed and we could get him up and down. He's laying there. The coroner hadn't even been there yet. If you've ever been around somebody that died of cancer, hospice comes back in. They get all their medicine. They get a great big Ziploc bag. They put vinegar and bleach in it, dump all the pills, and they shake it up. In my messed up mind, I'm looking like, man, are they really fixing to waste all them pills? See, I wasn't worried about my dad laying there dead. I was worried about that pain dope. They're wasting all of that. That's how horrible I was. So I was already doing really bad, and it got a whole lot worse when Dad died. Nobody to try to correct me, nobody really to help me. And man, I just went plumb off the deep end. The stuff that I'd said I'd never do, the stuff that I said, well, at least I'm not doing coke and meth, I was doing it. A few months after that, at least I ain't shooting up. Y'all know how that goes. Next thing you know, you got track marks in your arms, you're stealing from your grandma, you're robbing folks left and right, doing whatever you got to do to get another high. I got to a point in November where I knew it was getting real bad. I was just about out of all the money I could possibly steal. My 401k, my savings, everything that I'd ever built up was just about gone. My birthday is November 27th. That was my last big high. I got some birthday money. A lot of the family had got to where they would give me gift cards. Hey, man, guess what? My dope man took gift cards. So, I went on one more time. And then in December, my son's 12 years old at this time. We're staying at my mom's house. Couldn't find my pain pills that day, so I went and got a whole bunch of coke. Done all of it. The dope man called about 10 or 11 o'clock that night and said, hey, I got them. So I went and got 30 30s. That was all I had left. And y'all know how we did. In my mind, I'll have them in the morning. That way I won't be sick when I get up. Y'all know what we did. We took all of them. I remember laying in that bed, looking over at my son, and I could feel myself stop breathing. And I'd catch my breath. I'm gasping. I don't know what was going on. I do. I was overdosing. And I just remember, I had my phone in my hand trying to call 911. I couldn't do anything. And at that point, I prayed, and it was the first time I'd really meant it. And I said, God, if you'll pull me out of this one more time, I'll do whatever you want me to the rest of my life. My son's been through enough. He was at the house when I shot myself. He's seen his grandpa die. He's seen me go to rehab after rehab after rehab. God, please don't let him wake up and find me dead. He don't need to wake up and find his dad dead in this bed. I woke up the next morning, looked over there at him. I didn't even really feel that bad. I was a little dope sick, but called my mom and said, I'm taking Weston home. Can you come home? We need to talk. She come home. I said, look, I need help. We've got to do something different. She said, well, I've been knowing something's going on for a long time. We'll get you in somewhere. I said, well, we got to go like right now. I said, because it ain't going to be long. It's already been about 6 hours. We got to go somewhere. So I went to Kennett, Missouri to the detox, and here's how many times I'd been there. I walk in. They said, hey, Mark, welcome back. Go down there to the same room you were in last time. The charge nurse there in that detox come out and said, we heard about your dad dying. I'm surprised you made it this long. Welcome back. We're glad you made it. I'm like, man, this sucks. This is what my life has become. I was the guy that was on top of the world making $100,000 a year, had 2 new vehicles and motorcycles and drag race cars and trucks. I had all this stuff. By the world standard, I was doing great, man. I was on top of the world. Now look at me. I'm a crackhead, and they're telling me, welcome home when I go to rehab. What has happened? But my aunt got to calling around, and they knew some folks named Glenn and Holly Burnett from Paragould. Glenn's, I guess, president of Focus Bank. Holly's brother, Adam Acuff, had been to John 3:16. They said, Adam, we'd like you to go talk to Mark. He said, well, I'm at work right now, but when I get done, I get off tonight, I'd be glad to. Where's he at? He's in the Kennett Hospital, Kennett, Missouri. Well, Adam was working on the Wendy sign and said he looked down. He was in Kennett working on the Wendy sign, and the hospital's right there. Said he started booming down immediately, called his boss and said, I have got to go right now. God just slapped me in the face with something. I got to go. He come and talked to me. I told him, you don't understand. You haven't been where I've been. He pulls his phone out and shows me all the plates and screws and all the stuff he's had done, all the surgeries. He said, man, I get it. You've tried everything, but you hadn't tried Jesus. I said, man, I'm going to die anyway. Let's go. So we went to John 3:16 that Sunday. They weren't interviewing, weren't taking anybody. It was 3 weeks before Christmas, and just not taking anybody. We're full. But there was something that happened in that church service that I'd never felt. Loving My Jesus was the first song that played in there. Man, I broke down in tears. I felt something I'd never felt. So I went and signed in like I was going to interview. They just signed us in that you were there. Come back next week. So I called Adam about Wednesday. He said, man, I've got to go back. Them folks up there got something I want. I don't know what it is, but I want it. So we went back, same deal, sat through service. The song that got me that week was Chain Breaker. There was something about that song when it started, and I'm like, man, that's me, that's my life. And it spoke to me. Music speaks to me about as much as this word does. I know that sounds crazy, but this praise and worship music, man, it gets to my heart. But they got done with service. We're not interviewing. We're full. It's too close to Christmas. We're not taking anybody. Like, all right, well, that's it. I'm a dead man. We're walking and almost out the door. If you've been to John 3, you walk kind of up the little incline. Door going to the left of the main lobby. I was in that doorway pushing on the door, and Adam Acuff said, hang on, Brian's going to talk to you. Go back in there. Kind of told him and Miss Bev, just me and him, Miss Bev, and a couple more guys trying to get in. Told my story. He said, well, will you come back next week? If you'll come back next Sunday, we'll take you. And I just looked down and teared up and said, yes, sir, if I'm alive, I don't know if I'll be alive to come back next week. And Bev nudged him and said, take him. He said, we're going to let you move in. So I moved into John 3. I felt a little relieved, like, hey, maybe I'm not going to die. Maybe it's something here. A couple weeks later, Mitch Bell was doing a Bible study, and I hit my knees. I don't know if y'all have ever heard Mitch Bell, but he brings the heat. He's the guy that does Bible study, and we ain't going home till somebody gets saved tonight. That's just how it's going to be. But, man, I felt it, and I felt something tugging. I thought in my addiction there was a point there for a couple of weeks that I was doing right and going to church and thought I'd got saved. It was this simple for me. I realized something. I'm retarded without Jesus. I can't do anything without him, nothing. But I hit my knees at that altar, and I said, God, I don't know if I need to rededicate. I don't know if I need to get saved. I don't know what's going on, but I need Jesus in my heart and in my life. I can't do this. The very best I could come up with in life was a bullet in my own head laying in the med for 3 months. That was the very best I could come up with. So I got saved, got baptized. About 4 months into John 3, I started feeling maybe this is what Dad was talking about. He said God left me alive for a reason. So I started praying, and maybe I'm supposed to be staff here. I don't know, but I'm praying about it, and I prayed, God, just make this where I can't mess it up. You know, give me something to where if you want me to stay here, I know that this is what you're calling me to do, because I know I'm retarded without you. This sounds like a made-up story, but this really happened. So there's canvases around on every wall in the residence rooms at John 3. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I prayed that prayer, dead asleep, and a canvas fell off of the wall and hit me across the forehead, and I jumped up like, man, what in the world? Flicked the light on, and it's Psalms 46:10. I held that canvas up, and it said, be still and know that I'm God. Like, okay, I got it. I'm doing it. So I stayed there, did a whole lot of stuff. It was good for me. Every day that I was at John 3:16, I needed to be there. That place, the place didn't save my life, but it led me to the one that did. I'm forever grateful. But I got to do dirt work. I got to be on the carpenter crew. I met some of the, Toby Wicker's one of the best friends I got on the planet. I met him at John 3:16. And I'm just forever grateful for being there. I got to run the print shop for a while. I mean, I went through some stuff on that when I was a lineman. It was like, hey, if this don't fit or it won't come loose, you go get a bigger hammer and you beat it until you get it loose. Well, they send me in this print shop. Here's your computer. Day one, they said, go ahead and email so-and-so. Tell them we'll have their shirts there in a week. And I sat down and just kind of smiled like, all right, how do I do that? I didn't know how to send an email. Like, man, if it don't involve a hammer or, some type of machinery, but I'll figure it out. But I got good in there. The Lord blessed it. When you're doing stuff for the right reason and the intents of your heart are right, God will make it where you can do just about anything. I learned to play keyboard at John 3:16 in 3 weeks. So that I was just messing around. And y'all know Brian Tuggle at all. When he hears something and decides something, that's just how it's going to be. He heard me messing around. Who was that playing? I was like, I was just messing around. He said, good, you're playing Sunday. I'm like, wow, all right. So I did. Ended up playing the bass in the band for a while. Something about being able to play music and watching the people come to the altar. It's not about us up there. It's not about how good you can play or none of that or how good you can sound, but being up there and being able to lead people into worship. And, man, I really love that part of it. But I stayed there from 2016 until about 3 months ago. So something else that I kind of went through there, I'd watched, I think it's 12 instructors that I had interviewed, that I took into the ministry, Jesus did, but he used me to do it. I watched them all get married. God brought them a wife to the ministry. I'm like, man, look at this. I'm like, all right, God, I've been sitting here praying for a long time. I'm being patient. Where's mine? Where's mine? You know, I come to realize something, that sometimes he's waiting on us to give everything up before he'll give us what he really wants us to have. So I prayed a prayer, and God, I don't deserve a wife. I've had a few of them and screwed it all up. You've pulled me out of the pits of hell again. I told you I'd serve you the rest of my life, and I'm going to. Paul didn't have a wife. John Britt's been at this ministry, serving hard for 13 years. He don't have a wife. Okay, I'm good. I'm here anyway. 2 weeks later, we had Zach Williams at John 3:16, and at the concert, 3:17 was working the booth, and I was cooking. They were working the tent. Well, this lady grabs me by the arm and says, sir, can we get some more water? And I'm like, wow. It's like God slapped me in the face right there and then and said, there she is. What are you going to do? I'm like, all right, man, maybe something's going on. So that lady was Lauren, my wife. We've been married a little over a month. You know, God's got a sense of humor with things. So we met and then find out she just became staff at John 3:17, and she can't date or talk on the phone or nothing for a year. Like, boy, okay. But we waited, and then we went through. John 3's got their own dating process. You got to go with accountability the first few dates and certain ways you got to do things. So we did that. We got engaged at the We the Kingdom concert and had plans to be married September the 9th at John 3:16. They were going to do the catering. The wedding was going to be great. It was going to be right there. Pictures be made there and everything. So 43 days before the wedding, right after Bible study one morning, we're headed to work. I'm doing dirt work on the new building they're building up there, and John Britt flags me down and says, get your guys going. Come to the multipurpose. We need to talk to you. And I could tell something in his voice. I'm like, John, what's going on? Are y'all running me off or something? And he just put his head down. I seen a tear roll out. And I'm like, man, what in the world? I ain't done nothing. He said, just come on down to the building. So I go down there. For whatever reason, I love John 3:16 Ministries. I'm not going to badmouth the place, but I got asked to leave. And I'm like, man, I've been here almost 7 years. We're supposed to get married in 43 days right here. What is the deal? Well, you know, you get married and your mama's sick. I'm like, okay. God's got a bigger plan. I'll be honest, I got plumb mad and was about ready to fight for a minute, and then I got hurt, and then I had to realize God's in control. So I left. I went to stay with my mom. That was on a Friday. So here's God working. All right, Friday, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we're still going to get married September the 9th. Sunday night, the 3:17 had a graduation. Their board met. Lauren called me Monday morning in tears about 9 o'clock and said, we don't have to look for a place. We're going to live at John 3:17. They want us here. You can help build stuff here. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. So all that happened. 3:17 is awesome. Their board, the people there, the Rimmel Church, amazing people. If you ain't been, you need to go. But we go to church there. She's staff at 3:17. You know, I talked about the music. I really miss that. I really was missing getting to play praise and worship music. Well, Rimmel was Church of Christ. They don't have instruments in there. They did the first 3 songs on Sunday service with a track, and that was as far as that went. Well, we got to ask, hey, you play keys a little bit, right? So would you be interested? Yes, absolutely. So the last 4 weeks, I've got to help lead praise and worship with my wife and 2 other girls that sing amazing. One of the elders, Mr. Tony, started 2 weeks ago playing guitar with us. So now we have 3 songs of live worship. So y'all, all that stuff I've done, hopefully it made sense to somebody. You know, there's a lot of times that I went to rehab or felt like I needed to do something different, and I was sorry, but it was worldly sorrow. I was sorry that I got caught. I was sorry that I hurt somebody. I was sorry that I stole that money. See, that produces nothing but death. But godly sorrow, it says the Word of God says it produces repentance leading to salvation. When I truly got down on my knees and said, I'm tired of living this way, God, save me, help me, He showed up and showed out. He'll do that in your life too. All you got to do is submit and give up. I mean, it's that simple. It's an honor. It's a blessing to get to be here. Man, just if you don't know Jesus, what are you waiting on? Tomorrow ain't promised. What are you waiting for? There's people here that'll pray with you. There's people here that will lead you into to where to read this word to find out who he is. Because, see, you got to know who somebody is to get a relationship with them. You can't just say, oh, I got saved last night. I repeated after the pastor. I did that 3 or 4 times when I was a kid, and it never worked. Man, when it changes, when stuff starts happening and you realize I have to do something different, Perry Ross put it like this one time, one of the greatest instructors I think's ever been at John 3. He said, when the consequences become greater than the desire to get high, you'll stop. And that's what I want to leave y'all with tonight. I love you. Hopefully the consequences have got greater than the desire. If you're clean, I don't care if it's 1 day, 6 hours, or 10 years, stay that way. The only way to stay that way, this cross up above me, stay at the foot of the cross. Everybody's going to hit wrong notes. You're going to get off track. Go back to the foot of the cross. I love y'all.